Who is deciding exactly how long this CCP virus lockdown is going to last? Why have Catholics been so severely restricted from access to the sacraments? And will nominal and low information Catholics simply drift off from regular practicing of their faith once this thing is over? This is the Patrick Coffin Show. Hit that subscribe button, hit the notification thingy, I think that's the technical term, the bell, and don't search for the show. The show will come to you. This episode of the Patrick Coffin Show is brought to you by Covenant Eyes. Now, this is appropriate that I'm partnering with Covenant Eyes because, according to Pornhub, porn use is up. Their downloads are up by 20% since this CCP virus lockdown, which is not good, especially for Catholics, because while porn use is up in the world, absolution is zero. So, covenanteyes.com. If you use my name, Patrick, as a coupon code, you get 30 days for free to try out this bad boy. It's on all our devices, laptops, tablets, phones. Get protected. Covenanteyes.com. PATRICK is the coupon code. And you're welcome in advance. Coming up next, Philip Lawler, editor, author of Lost Shepherd, Smoke of Satan, and he's the grand poobah at Catholic Culture. And we're here, and we'll be right back. As promised, Phil, so great to connect with you again. I know this is last minute, and so happy quarantine, and thanks for your time.
Well, thank you. I wasn't going anywhere.
You've recently been writing it on the Catholic Culture website, some musings, and one of them caught my eye. I've interviewed Michael Pacolic, and I find him to be a very astute observer of things, a kind of a good reader of the signs of the times in a balanced way. And he wrote something on the Catholic thing that you comment on, and he says that the people who believed that the human race is a blight, that we're a danger to the Earth's delicate ecosystem, that population control should be the law of the land, inequality is always wrong, and wealth should be redistributed. These are our masters, right? These are the overlord oligarchs that make so many decisions for the rest of us. I think that's a really good thought experiment. Are these the people you want in charge of running this lockdown, this COVID time?
No, not at all. And I thought that the point that Mike Pacolic made that was really astute was that these people have every incentive, given what they think, to keep the lockdown going as long as they can, because the lockdown gives them the power to tell us what to do, and they don't really trust us.
Yeah, we've met the problem in it, and it's us.
Right. And they want to continue to tell us what we should and shouldn't be able to do. And of course, just among other things, religion doesn't figure in their idea of what we should be able to do. It's just not a factor at all.
Let me get to more specifically Catholic things. I was pretty stunned by the missive issued by Milwaukee Archbishop Listecki forbidding these drive-in masses, and I know someone who went to one of them. You show up, your cars are spaced properly, all your windows are up. It seems a lot safer than going to the grocery store where you can handle Brussels sprouts and carrots for an hour. No one's going to do anything. He said it was unsafe and undignified, and I wasn't sure because he didn't describe undignified or unsafe behavior. Is this an overreach? Is this something that could have been a creative workaround for Catholics to engage their right to the sacraments?
Absolutely. And I was very surprised by Archbishop Listecki because, give him credit, he had at first allowed for these drive-in masses. Mm-hmm. And then he changed his mind within a week. And I think incomprehensibly, because as you say, look, you're in the car. Whoever you're in the car with is in your household. If they're infected, you're infected already. You're not infecting anyone else. The Archbishop said that the problem arose with the distribution of communion. Mm-hmm. And I understand that. I don't think it's an insoluble problem, but obviously it does pose some problems. But the first solution would be to say, okay, you can have a drive-in mass, but you can't distribute communion. I personally would find that acceptable. I'd rather have the Mass without communion than communion without the Mass, and certainly rather than no Mass at all. Mm-hmm. So it seems so obvious that you could work around this, that you could make it workable. It's very hard for me to understand why he pulled the plug completely.
I have to think that part of this is a fear of liability lawsuits. I mean, God forbid someone comes down with COVID-19 and tries to pin it on that the Eucharistic celebration. Is lawsuit phobia at play here?
I don't know. I suppose it might be. I think it's more my leading contender, the way I see it, is that the bishops are trying to be community leaders and understand that with a capital C and a capital L. And they want to be recognized as the sort of people who will play ball with the governor, with the mayor. They're doing the same sort of thing. So they are just one step behind the governor and the mayor in declaring things illegal and irresponsible.
I don't
see
know
this all the way, by the way. I couldn't help but notice one day, I was sitting at my desk and it comes across the wire that the Italian police who control St. Peter's Square have closed St. Peter's Square. Mm-hmm. They control it. That's not the Vatican's decision. But within hours, within maybe 3 hours, the Vatican had closed St. Peter's Basilica. Mm-hmm. It's hard for me to credit the idea that was an independent decision. And I keep seeing the same sort of thing happening in this country as well.
On March 13th, Pope Francis issued a letter to priests in Rome, which I understand is still not translated into English. I've seen a kind of a Google translated version of it. And he seemed to be praising priests in the Bergamo and Lombardy districts up in the north for their creative workarounds, basically finding ways to be close to the people. One of them that came to mind was having a mass celebrated on the roof of a tenement house, so everyone has their windows open and they're at least within eye and earshot of the celebration of the mass. That letter didn't get a lot of play, and people are surprised to learn that the Pope would, on the one side of his mouth, issue decrees, on the other side of his mouth, sort of regret those decrees and praise people who are getting things done despite the regulations.
Yeah, now I don't know what letter you're referring to, but there was a statement that came out that at first was attributed to the Pope. It turned out to be from one of his secretaries, his private priest secretaries.
I think that might have been the Vicar of Rome. They had a bit of a dust-up about closing the churches in Rome, but this one was directed to priests. I don't know if anyone is challenging that, but I guess it goes to the double-mindedness. I don't know about you. I do not warm up to these liturgies. I just find them like watching a show. Just a personal thing. I was not moved by the Good Friday service, for instance. It looked like a very stage managed thing, beautifully rendered with the photographic angles obviously rehearsed. And there's the Pope sort of staring at the Eucharist, no kneeler. No people, no kneeler. And I understand that cross, which dates to the 16th century, which was brought in procession to Rome to ward off the plague, was badly damaged by sitting in the rain for 2 hours that day. That another story that didn't get out terribly well.
No. I guess I'm like you. I suppose watching a Mass on TV is better than nothing at all. But it's not the Mass. It's not the same. You're not seeing it isn't the real presence. It's pixels on a screen, mm-hmm. and to be sitting there on your sofa where 12 hours before you were eating popcorn and watching Die Hard 3, we've lost the sense of a sacred space. And I worry that one of the many evil effects of this shutdown, I think, is going to be a lot of Catholics aren't going to come back because they're going to say, well, look, I was watching on TV, and by the way, the bishops and priests were telling me, oh, you don't have to come to Mass. You can just watch on TV. They were telling me that this was an acceptable substitute. So now I'm going to watch on TV. Well, maybe after a few weeks I'll decide I don't need to do that either.
Yeah, I can't help but think that the low information or unevangelized Catholics they're just going to, we're all creatures of habit. 2 generations now have never been told that deliberately missing Mass on Sunday is a mortal sin. People are shocked to hear this. I thought it was supposed to be a choice. So the idea of God having a claim and justice to our praise and worship is totally foreign. And I just can't help but think this is going to further fuzzify an already bad catechetical situation.
It is, and I've heard several things that upset me. One is people saying, what's the point of going to Mass if you can't get communion? Well,
right.
It's to worship the Lord. It's it's not about me, and it's our obligation in justice to God to worship on Sunday. It's as you say, it's a moral requirement for Catholics. And just by the way, another thing that troubled me quite a bit was so many bishops who issued statements saying there's not going to be Mass on Sunday. It would have been very easy for them to say, as they have the authority to say to their people, you are dispensed from your obligation. But they didn't say that. Mm-hmm. They said instead you can watch on TV. Now, some did say it, but an awful lot of bishops didn't bother to say you're dispensed from your obligation. So on the one hand, you still are under an obligation to go. On the other hand, you can't go. Well, of course, you can never be under an obligation to do something that's impossible. But why put us through that stress?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could say that the CCP lockdown is what's the word? If you're a clergy, if you have holy orders, so you're a priest or a bishop, you're pandemic proof because Mass does go on. I presume that every priest is saying Mass every day. So Mass is literally not canceled. It's just that lay people are not allowed to participate in any way.
Right. In different ways. I mean, there have been places where lay people are allowed to participate. There have been pastors who have been extremely creative and thoughtful and obliging and pastoral and found ways to work through the various restrictions. But boy, the restrictions are making it tough.
I had a live stream the week before last with Janet Smith talking about her effort to urge the bishops to come up with greater ways of accessing the sacraments. We are an easterpeople.com if you want to join your voice to that. And they've heard back positively from some of the bishops. I guess Janet lost a bet that she thought no one would, but some of them had said, you know what, this is a good idea, and we should do what we can do. Because I think about especially the young, very orthodox, evangelically minded priests who really, they love their priesthood, they love being with people, and they're told that they can't celebrate the sacrament of the sick under any circumstance. Well, I think you're going to find a lot of angry Catholic families when the dust is settled on this. Uncle Fred loved the Lord and he wanted that sacrament, and Father, you didn't come because you didn't want to make your bishop angry. I see a lot of conscience struggles among some priests about, do they, risk being sent to the Siberia parish, or risk, or give the appearance of being obedient.
That's right. I see the same sort of thing. I see a lot of very good priests who are very frustrated and are, as I said, working creatively to try to find a way to minister to people despite the regulations, with some degree of success, some more than others. I also see, frankly, some lazy priests who are using this as an occasion to do nothing, and nothing is demanded of them at this point. What troubles me the most is that I worry that the lazy priests are now viewed by the Chancery as the ones who are doing what they should be doing, and the imaginative ones are viewed as potential troublemakers.
Exactly. Yeah, rewarding the wrong behavior.
Right. And so who are the next generation of bishops? Are they the ones who are sitting in their rectories and watching reruns, contributing to the Netflix bandwidth crash? Or are they the ones who are really good pastors who are trying to give us the sacraments?
Inside Coffin Nation, we do live webinars, and I brought up the point of the patron saint of cardinals and archbishops is Charles Borromeo, who ministered to thousands of plague victims. There's some famous paintings of him distributing Holy Communion on the tongue, of course, to people who were actually stricken by a real, bubonic plague. And he's their patron. Another comparison might be St. Damien of Molokai, who was technically disobedient. He clashed with the Archbishop of Honolulu. He had grave disagreements with his own superior in Belgium, but he wanted to be with those lepers, even when they wouldn't send him another priest so he could go to confession. And history does not remember any of those guys, but St. Damien is raised to the altars. I think there's a lesson there.
In fact, St. Charles Borromeo, that's an interesting point you make, because I've seen several people point out that because of the plague, he closed churches in Milan, which he did. But he celebrated the Mass outside the churches,
right,
in the streets. So he was one of those creative pastors. He was not, it's not that he ignored the danger of the plague. He recognized the need to close the churches, although that really turned out not to have been the problem. But he was always looking for a way to minister to the people.
Hey, this is Patrick Coffin. If you like what you see and hear and you want to see and hear more, consider joining Coffin Nation as a full member. Just click right here and find out more about what that means. Nipsey, my fedora. That's Coffin Nation, the world's largest online community of culture builders. Click right here. See you on the inside.